Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Russell Jackman, because Vern Glenn is off on vacation for the next 2 weeks. Holy smokes, how come we don't get a vacation? You know?
I just got one, and it was 1 week, and it wasn't long enough. And here I am driving back down to the South Bay. So to listen to anyone else having a 2-week vacation, I'm insanely jealous.
Okay. Yeah, I don't get a vacation here for another month, almost another month, but it is what it is. All right, let's see. No guests today, but a few different topics that I'm going to want to cover, or we're going to want to cover. A story about Omar Vasquel. Want to talk about how the women just dominated in the USA Olympics to get all the medals not all, but get most of the medals for the USA in the Olympics. A former Polish sprinter is demanding that a Namibia's woman take a sex reaffirming test after her Olympic medal. Holy smokes, can you believe that? Years ago, sports betting outside of Vegas was demonized. Now it looks like it's going to become mainstream. LeBron recruiting Carmelo Anthony to the Lakers. And will the new name, image, likeness rules allow college players to earn endorsement deals? Will that lead to a bunch of cheating recruitments? We'll talk about that a little in depth. And then I'm sure Russell's got some stuff he wants to talk about as well. And this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments currently yielding over 7%, secured by real estate primarily in California. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Stay with us. You are listening to Sports Econ 101 with Edward Brown and Russell Jackman. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. Mr. Vern Glenn is off today. I forgot to mention that today's trivia theme is football. So we know how much Russell loves football. So we figured, okay, football's going to be starting here pretty soon. Let's get started on football first. Okay, so first, Omar Vasquel. He's been accused of inappropriate sexual conduct with an autistic bat boy. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet. Do these allegations disqualify him now? And then also, what about the Cleveland Hall of Fame that he is in? Do they take him out? Well, what do you think about all this?
Well, we're always in that zone where it comes to our allegations enough to cause a backlash or repercussion on somebody's career. And I'm always in my thoughts that, if it's an active player and there's accusations, then I'd say a suspension is worth it to wait till that person has been proven innocent or guilty. You suspend somebody, like in the case of that Dodgers pitcher.
Yeah, boy, that's a tricky line though, because if you think about it, if you're on, let's say, another team and you want this player who's going to be facing you as a pitcher, let's say, you want him out of there, all you have to do is just put in a shill who's going to accuse him. And there you go. At least he gets suspended for a certain period of time.
It hasn't happened, and I would say this: if that did happen and was then discovered, whoever put that person up as a shill should probably be banned for life from whatever sport they did that with.
No,
so that's the first thing.
Yep.
Second thing is that the leagues have all said that it doesn't take a criminal conviction for there to be a suspension. Now, when you're talking a Hall of Fame type thing, now that's a different story because the player is not actually active. I would say that it would still take more than just an accusation for there to be those kind of repercussions where you literally, yank their ability to be in a Hall of Fame or be, some kind of award. you're going to take,
Yeah. So let me ask you.
you should have more than just a bare allegation.
Okay, now what about the fact that he's already in the Cleveland Hall of Fame, which obviously is just, their own special little thing. But if, let's say he is, let's say, taking your analogy, if you go a little further, let's say he ends up, getting convicted. Do you then extract him out of a Hall of Fame?
I would say, given the seriousness of those charges, yes,
Okay.
I would.
Well, sort of like, didn't
I
they
would
take
say you don't want someone who's a pedophile or someone who's a sexual assaulter to
Yeah.
be part of your makeup of a Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame. Now, one thing that I would also say is that we should probably try to find out what the Hall of Fame's requirements are, and if they already have something in their charter that says, to be in the Hall of Fame, you need to have these qualities, and if you are accused of doing this or doing that, then your status in the Hall of Fame could be revoked.
Yeah, didn't they
So they
take?
may have.
Didn't they remove Reggie Bush from USC?
Yeah, well, they
Yeah.
had to, because he was part of the recruiting scandal that meant that USC actually lost a title to it.
Yeah. Well, I guess then I guess the question becomes, what is the definition of a serious? Like where do you draw the line? And I'm not saying you're right or wrong, because I think actually you're more right than you're wrong. But where would you draw the line? Would it be, if you get 3 DUIs, or if you get 1
It
DUI
really is
to
up to
kill
the Hall of
somebody?
Fame.
What's it? Say again?
It really is the Hall of Fame. It's up to the Fame to
Not the
set
Hall of
those requirements,
Infamous.
and ahead of time, before they nominate. Yeah, well, it's before they enshrine anyone in the Hall of Fame, they need to look at that ahead of time and say, we're letting you in, but it's on the condition that not only do you have a positive past, but if you do something in the future that jeopardizes your status
Yeah.
and makes us look bad for having you in our Hall of Fame, we reserve the right to remove you from, because this is the one thing, you have no right to be in the Hall of Fame, any Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Ever.
That's true.
It's not a part of the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's not a part of anything. It's an award and it's an honor.
Yeah.
And with anything that involves something that's honorable, if you act in a dishonorable fashion, you can have that reward taken away from you.
That's a good point. And it's very subjective. By
Yeah, it
the people
is.
who put you in, maybe,
That's because there's never been a cut and dried requirement.
status for like, if you hit so many home runs or you get so many hits, you're
Right.
automatically in. Because there were people in there who were voted in who, I was just reading an article on Sports Illustrated where some of these people was like, how did this guy even get in? He was a decent player, but nowhere near a Hall of Fame. And a lot of them were, guys from the 1920s, and then there were some people in the 40s and 50s, and like someone like, let's say, like Nellie Fox. He was a good player, a very good player, but his stats were just not Hall of Fame stats. And then even later on, you had players like Harold.
Well,
Baines,
and also, we're judging people based on the criteria of what modern players do. And so, where there are certain players that when you look in their era were Hall of Fame worthy, but then we look at it later and we go, oh, well, geez,
That's a very good point, because especially if in the dead ball era there was apparently what they would do is they would use the same ball no matter how scuffed up or whatever it got, and that's going to change. It's going to change things a little bit, and also the gloves have changed over time, and then I guess the
over my vacation, I was in Red Bluff, and my cousin doesn't have a lot of TV channels, so we watched a movie. One of his favorite movies. He brought out a DVD of The Natural.
Oh yeah, yeah. Robert Redford and with the blood.
And so I watched The Natural over again, which I hadn't seen in like 30 years. I mean, it's kind of a trip for who's a younger man than I am now in that movie.
Yeah.
And see Robert Redford and like remind yourself, about the way that baseball was played back in the late 30s,
yeah.
In the early 40s,
Wow.
or the nat.
Yep. Hey, we're going to cut to our first commercial break of trivia questions. Again, football is the theme. Which NFL team was the first to lose 3 Super Bowls? That is our trivia question. You can email.
The first to lose 3 Super Bowls. Okay.
Yeah, and which
I think I know who that is.
Which NFL team was the first to lose 3 Super Bowls? Email Edward at sportsecon101.com. The answer to that question, we'll see if you know it. We come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Olympics, and then we'll talk a little bit about gambling and some other good stuff. All right, so stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Russell Jackman. Next week, actually, Vern will be off again, but we'll have him back the following week. So here's our first football question. Which NFL team was the first to lose 3 Super Bowls? Mr. Jackman.
I'm going to say it was Fran Tarkenton's Vikings.
It was the Vikings. Very good. They were back then. They were my beloved Vikings. I loved Fran and the way he scrambled. Of course, being as little as he was, he definitely had to scramble for his life. Especially without all the protections that the quarterbacks have now with tackling. I could see why he would scramble quite a bit. Let's see. Okay, so
I actually was rooting. When I was a little kid, I rooted for the Vikings since the Niners were just terrible. So in the Super Bowls, I rooted for the Vikings, and I was always very disappointed that they weren't able to win.
Yeah, the first Super Bowl I really do remember was my Vikings losing to the Chiefs, and that was a hard one. That was a hard one for sure. Okay, yeah, because I don't quite remember the Jets Super Bowl. I think back then I was so little I didn't really, didn't follow.
I don't remember it because I wasn't in existence at the time.
Is that right? That's a good
harder for me to
You've got a good excuse for not remembering that. Okay, so now the USA wins the Olympics, and it seems like it's primarily because of the women, because 66 out of the 113 medals. Now, one of the reasons that's been tossed around out there idea-wise is mostly because a lot of countries do not freely allow their women to compete. So it's nothing to take away specifically from the USA women, but I got to think that's kind of true, right? I mean, not all countries treat women the same way as the USA does, with being able to support them and encourage them to compete in sports. Don't you agree? Mr. Jackman, you there?
Hold on, I'm just going through a tunnel. I think that women in America are just getting the message that being competitive in sports is now not eyebrow raising. It's women are getting tougher, and they're getting more competitive, and they're seeing that there's no real barriers anymore.
Well, that's been like that in the USA for a really long time, I think.
I think it's getting more and more. I think the attitudes are still evolving towards acceptance on that.
Really?
And really
in the USA,
yeah,
you think that's the case?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it used to be that like women's soccer was something that, people just sort of knew was in the background. And now there's people saying, I actively want to watch that.
Yeah,
I want to watch women's basketball.
and
It's
yeah, I was gonna
not
say
that,
women's
you know,
basketball too.
yeah, it's not, oh, hooray, the women won. It's like, wow, I want to watch them win.
Yeah,
You know, people are actively watching the women running, and they're watching the women, you know, diving, and they're watching the women playing in team sports instead of just waiting for the results to happen. And there's a lot more coverage
yes,
on the Olympics of the women's side of things. It used to, I remember when, you know, watching the Olympics in the past, and it's so, the coverage, the TV coverage was so male dominated. But
what
now I
about
think it's become a lot more even.
but still, what about other countries? You know, let's say like Middle Eastern countries, you know, they don't really, I gotta think that they don't support women's sports as much. Wouldn't you
The,
agree? Middle
well,
East?
I think so. You know, I'm not going to make too many political statements on that side of things, but I think here in America, we've just gotten to the point where women's sports as a spectator side of things
Yeah,
has really increased. I think that
yeah,
people are more accepting now of watching women's sports and not saying, "Oh, well, you're watching, you know, uh, uh, athletes, but they're not as good as the men."
yeah.
Now, I think a lot of people have accepted the fact that watching
Well,
women's sports
I mean, I mean, even
is,
shoot, even MMA fighting, you know, is getting that way too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you know, you're like 20 years ago, the idea of women fighting women in a boxing type, a MMA type scenario was seen as too barbaric, and you know, usually, like, you know, most guys would be like, well, these chicks aren't hot, so I'm not going
well,
to
yeah, I was gonna
watch.
say only if it was mud wrestling, then they were interested. Um,
Exactly. And now we've gone from that to looking at these women not as sex objects, but as real athletes.
athletics,
And what
yeah.
are they doing?
Well, and the thing is, as they become better athletes and it becomes more enjoyable, the money's going to flow because the sponsors are, you know, they'll get TV time, and all the other sponsorships will happen. It's just, you know, a natural progression of a capitalist society, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And an improvement in the product. I mean, that's
yeah,
the other thing too, is that women have gotten better and more competitive as they see the opportunities, you know, arise for them where they could actually do this for a profession, or
yeah,
that they could do it to compete. If they get a gold medal, they're going to wind up earning nearly as much as the men do. You
yeah.
know, it used to be a huge disparity between, you know, a Michael Phelps and, you know, Mary Lou Retton, as far as like the money that you would get from winning a gold, you
Well, they
know.
didn't.
And
You mean talk about sponsorships?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because I was saying they didn't get paid for playing, you know, being in the Olympics, but
No, no, it's about
no, but like
sponsorships, and that's a big deal.
women's basketball, I think that's probably been one of the biggest changes in the last 20 years. You know, because
Sure.
you know they just 20 years ago, it just really was not a very exciting game to watch.
Well, and the WNBA helped garner more respect for the women's game, I
Yeah,
believe, and so people are more accepting of seeing women playing and also women's college basketball has really
yes,
evolved
yes, it has.
through the roof. And so again, it's now not seen as, you know, you're watching because there's nothing better to watch on TV. It's like you're watching it because it's interesting basketball, and the games are competitive,
Yeah,
and the you know, it's not, you're not having women missing, you know, a good women shooter shooting 25% from the field.
no,
You know,
exactly. Yeah. And yeah,
that has
they're
changed.
making, you know, the highlights on ESPN and that sort of thing. Hey, moving on here
Yeah.
to, so there's moving on, let's see here. So there's a former Polish sprinter who is demanding that Namibia, as that's a small country in Africa, Christine Mboma, that's her name, take a sex reaffirming test after her Olympic medal. I guess this former Polish sprinter is uh, trying to claim that this person is not a female. And what I'm kind of looking at is it's like, okay, well, take her DNA and all that kind of fun stuff. And as long as she's not taking performance enhancing drugs, if her testosterone levels are due to just nature, then keep the medal, right? I mean, it just happens to be. And I've said this before. It's like, do you make LeBron James play on his knees because he happens to be taller than the average man? No, he just naturally happens to be taller. So, how do you? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. If maybe this Polish sprinter is just looking at this person and going, well, she kind of looks like she's a man. I mean, comments?
I got to tell you this, and this is me to you and to the rest of the listeners out there, that my least favorite sports topic is transgender in sports. That is my absolutely least favorite topic. It's the topic that I'd like to avoid the most.
Okay.
And it's the only topic I really don't enjoy talking about. And I don't know if you've noticed this. When we have had these kind of topics, I let Vern talk and I fade into the background and I don't say.
Well, here's the thing is I don't know if, I mean, because now you can be a transgender and compete in the Olympics like that weightlifter did. So it's really not so much of a transgender question. I think it's just, has this person maybe been just a male and somehow sort of hid the family jewels in such a way that, like actually did not go through an operation? Because I'm just, what is a sex reaffirming test?
I really don't know. And it's the kind of thing that, to me, it's not where I want to be involved in sports. It's one of those politically charged issues more than it is economic. It's more political, and it usually doesn't have a good answer any way you look at it. You're going to offend somebody to the core of their existence, no matter what side you take on.
It could lead into the economics, though, right? Because a woman who's a real woman doesn't win a medal and can't get the endorsements because she gets beat out by somebody who,
But when we're talking the sheer numbers, how many times is this really going to happen?
5, and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And so when you really want to step back and look at, all the issues in sports, to me, it's a political issue because it doesn't happen enough on a regular basis.
Okay, that's a very good point. Tell you what, let's get to our next commercial break here.
Perfect.
Who broke Mark Gastineau's 20 sacks in a season in 2001? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back.
Yes.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. All right, here was our second trivia question. Who broke Mark Gastineau's 20 sacks in a season in 2001? You remember Mark Gastineau I think it was the late 80s. He was in the early 90s.
I remember his boxing. I remember him getting in the ring and boxing.
Yeah, I think he got kind of creamed too, didn't he?
Yeah, when you first said who broke Mark Gastineau, and the next thing that was coming out of my mind was his nose. I thought you were gonna bring up his boxing career. I
don't remember who boxed him, but he was with the New York Sack Exchange. Remember, he played for the Jets. That's what they used to call the New York Sack Exchange. So he had 20 sacks in a season, but then in 2001, who broke it, and the number was 20 and a half sacks. Which is pretty good because you got to think that's.
I'm going to throw this out there. Can you give me a slight clue, or do I just have to take it off of the number of sacks?
He played for the Giants.
He played for the Giants. Oh, then I'm way off. I was going to say Brian Bosworth, and now I have no idea.
No, because Bosworth, did he? I know he was gone by 2001, wasn't he?
Yeah.
No, Michael Strahan.
Oh yeah, okay. The gap-toothed one. Yes,
that's right. Okay, let's see here. Years ago, sports
First,
betting.
wait.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Before you go on to the next topic,
yeah.
I wanted to give my condolences to the family of beautiful Bobby Eaton, who died over the weekend and was part of the legendary tag team of the Midnight Express that a
Oh,
lot of people
wow.
do
I
consider
remember
one of
that.
the greatest tag teams of all time.
Oh,
And also to Jody Hamilton, who is better known as the Masked Assassin. And both of those gentlemen died over the week and were very influential in my career as a pro wrestling manager.
how
And
old were they when they passed?
well, Jody Hamilton lived to a eye-popping 82 for a professional wrestler. That's
That's
like
pretty good.
living to 200 years old.
Yeah.
But Bobby Eaton, unfortunately, died at age 62.
Oh, jeez.
And
That's crazy.
this follows a series of wrestlers who've died this year under the age of 65, and including Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Del Wilkes the Patriot, that, you know, unfortunately were is really sad to see guys that, you know, the only ones that are happy to hear about these guys dying before age 65 is the US government, because then they don't have to pay their Social Security.
Yeah.
They
So
they have these
is it
guys paying a lifetime into Social
now
Security
how
and
much
never
of it,
collecting.
in your opinion, how much of it is, drugs versus just the beating up of the body?
Bobby Eaton, I really don't believe it was drugs. I mean, everything that I've heard about Bobby Eaton was he was a totally stand-up guy. He was a guy that was straight as an arrow. But what had happened was only about a month ago, his wife died. And this may be a situation of somebody dying from heartbreak, and
Yeah.
which could be the worst way of dying, period. I think the
Yeah.
stress of his wife dying took Bobby Eaton's life, and you know, she had, I think they had been together for over 21 years, and she was everything to him. And
Wow.
when she died, he just couldn't get out of that level of stress and depression
Yeah, and I
from it.
mean the heart, yeah, the heart will go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are capable of having that happen to them at almost any age. When you think about how some people take the death of somebody that's significant to them, it can make their lives feel like they have no meaning.
Yeah.
And you know, not to get too melodramatic, but when I broke my hip in 2016 and I took OxyContin, it made me want to kill myself. And I know how that feeling is when you feel utterly pure despair and no hope at all. That, you
Was
know,
it so well so it wasn't so much the pain, it was more the inactivity of what you could do or what or the future?
oh, it's the OxyContin. The OxyContin is evil stuff. There's no way, in my opinion, that OxyContin should be legal.
So I mean what does it make?
Oh, it made me want to kill myself. It gave messages to me every day saying the easiest way for you to get out of this is to kill yourself. And I swear to you, and I'll say this to every one of our listeners, I swear this, that if I had owned a gun in 2016 when I had my hip broken and I was on OxyContin, I would have killed myself.
Wow. Wasn't there something you could
I
have told the doctor to give you something different?
Oh my God! The doctors in 2016 were handing out OxyContin like it was aspirin.
Yeah.
It's still the drug of choice from the hospital. And I fell and I broke my shoulder last year. I think you may remember.
Yep, I do.
And they gave me OxyContin again in the hospital. I begged them not to give it to me. And I took 3 pills, okay? Took 3 pills, and I started feeling depressed again, and I didn't touch it. And I went through a broken shoulder with ibuprofen and CBD. That
Wow.
is how I survived a broken shoulder. I will never take OxyContin again. It's the
Yeah.
worst drug in the entire universe.
I wonder how if it has the same effect on other people. You know, I mean, obviously you're not the only.
Probably not, because there'd be thousands of suicides
Yeah,
all
that's
over
true.
the place, or
Yeah.
millions of suicides. But
Yeah.
it was terrible for me. And pain is not as bad. Physical pain is
Yeah.
not as bad as psychological
Yeah.
depression
Yeah.
and being and sinking to a particular low and having no hope and feeling total hopelessness. And that's all that OxyContin did for me. You know, yet it took away the pain, but brought in a whole new set of pain that was much harder to deal with than just the physical pain.
Cure was worse than the disease, so to speak.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I am a number one advocator of getting rid of OxyContin and having people use other drug alternatives than OxyContin. You'll never find someone that believes in that more than myself.
About, gosh, 10 years ago, we had a friend's child who was probably 20 years old. He died over an OD of OxyContin.
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
so tragic.
Losing a child.
So tragic.
Terrible. Anyway,
something's got to be done.
Let's try to move on to something more more lively. So
sure.
Years ago, sports betting outside of Vegas was kind of demonized, and now it looks like it's going to become mainstream. You know, everybody.
Oh my God, yes.
So, how have thoughts on how things will change in the sports world? You know, are you going to even get more, you know, mafia involved type of thing? You know, more scandals of point shaving and
I feel really bad for anyone that has a gambling addiction. How, you know, it's like, you know, we're going back to drugs again, but it's like if you had a problem with heroin and suddenly heroin's on sale at Safeway.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's right now. I mean, if you have a gambling, thank God of the crazy things that I have going on in my life. The one thing I don't have is a gambling addiction. In fact, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine who is, you know, really into sports too, and he said, "God, you know so much about sports. You should bet on it," because he bets on sports. I said, "The reason why I don't bet on sports is because I want to enjoy them."
Exactly.
And I think once you start gambling on sports, it goes away from being an enjoyable thing and more towards something you're looking for to make money off of.
You're 100% right, because years ago I would bet on the Super Bowl, and then I bet there were other kinds of weird bets that you could do on the Super Bowl, and suddenly I wasn't enjoying the game as much because I was more concentrated on, okay, you know, you gotta score these points. I don't care which team does it because I've got the over 65, you know, or whatever it is, and suddenly I was like, you know what, this isn't fun. And I want to have fun. I want to enjoy the game. And, you know, yeah, sure, if I've got a horse in the race, like from the standpoint of a home team, fine. But other than that, I just want to see, you know, a good game. Like, you know, last year when you had the Chiefs and the Bucks, I cared, but I didn't care, right? Because you know, it's not like it was our home team, but I just wanted to see a really good football game, you know. In fact, that's funny because I didn't have a gambling addiction, but I used to like to go up to Reno and that sort of thing. And I was 25 years old. I'll never forget this. I had figured out on craps how you could actually have the odds in your favor for one roll of the dice. The odds were in your favor 6-1, but you'd only get paid effectively 4-1 at the most on your bet. So that's why, in theory, you know, over a long period of time, the house would still win. Well, sure enough, one roll of dice, and even though the odds were 6-1 in my favor, I mean, I did it a couple of times and it worked, and then I did it one more time and I got smoked, and I lost $1,600 on one roll of dice. And that was back in 1985.
I'm not a very good gambler. I get too nervous about the bet. I like playing cards with my friends, and that's something that was designed for gambling.
Yeah, that's a little different. That definitely, cards Yeah, cards
before.
is definitely a little
So,
different.
sports
Yeah, yeah.
is,
You know what though?
yeah, there's cards, there's dice, there's the roulette wheel, there's things that were, slot machines. Those things were meant for gambling. And in
yeah,
some ways, I liked the old fashioned way of having to go to Tahoe, having to go to Reno,
yeah,
having to go to a place that was set for gambling
yeah,
and playing there. Now on my way up to Red Bluff, I pass by at least 3 different casinos,
yeah.
and
Even casinos, yeah.
it's becomes very I mean, I bet you my kids won't think twice about gambling as a social construct, because it's going to be so mainstream to
Yeah,
them.
and
Now
that's
I don't gamble,
growing.
I don't do a lot of gambling in front of them, so they may
True.
say,
Yeah, but they
well,
don't see it.
it's
But
no
the thing
big
is,
deal,
yeah,
and they may not care about it.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a very interesting point. I tell you
But
what,
if
hey,
you've got that, if
tell you what, hey Russell,
I'm
let's get
sorry.
to our this segment went pretty fast. Let's go ahead and cut to our third trivia question here.
Okay.
If a Pittsburgh Steeler kicked a field goal with the ball hiked from the 50-yard line and made it, how long was the actual field goal? Does that make sense? You know the question?
Yes.
Okay. So that's our trivia question. And I just picked the Pittsburgh Steeler, but it doesn't matter. It could have been a Kansas City Chief. If a field goal kicker with the ball hiked from the 50-yard line and made it, how long?
By the way, that would be a record.
Oh, but how long was the actual field goal? All right. Stay with us. Sports
that
Econ
would
101. We'll be right back with some closing comments. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. Our third trivia question, football, the theme. If a Pittsburgh Steeler kicked the field goal with the ball hiked from the 50-yard line and made it, how long was the actual field goal?
Now, why did you pick a Steeler, by the way?
I don't know, just for fun.
You should have picked a Niner. But anyway,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have picked the Niner.
That would be a 67-yard field goal.
That is correct. 50 plus 10 plus 7. Didn't someone kick a 73-yard field goal one time?
No. I think the longest field goal, I mean, you've got the computer there. You could look it up, but I think the longest field goal is 63 yards.
Well, okay, Tom Dempsey was 63, but I think a Denver Bronco beat him.
Yeah, then it might be 65. It might be, but it was only by a couple.
Maybe it was like a college player or something with the wind blowing behind them, or
Well, you've got the computer there. Look it up real fast.
I don't have time right now because we have to continue on with our
Don't
show.
have time.
Stop on it. But are you ready?
You have time for the dad jokes.
I was going to say, here we go. We're going to cut out here's our thoughts for the day. So initially, I didn't believe that my chiropractor was any good, but now I stand corrected.
Oh,
Vern would have loved that one.
that really is bad. Oh my God.
Okay. And I'll be doing a book signing today at Barnes & Noble from 2 p.m. until they kick me out for writing in random books. You didn't laugh at that one, Russell.
Yeah, no. Some of these make me want to just drive off into an embankment when I hear these. They're so bad. I want to just end the suffering.
And by the way,
by driving into a wall.
Calories are used every hour you spend banging your head against a wall. That's an excellent way to lose weight, but don't try it at home. All right, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Adios, America.
Oh.